Hello, and welcome to Lesson 6 of this technical writing unit for my high school engineering class. This is Mr. Duffick, and this sixth lesson is on recommendation reports, how to write them, the structure, and the importance of them in industry. So what are recommendation reports? Well, certain times in industry when you're working on projects or a company hires you as a contractor or something like that, they often want you to do an analysis of some kind of problem they have. And more importantly, when you do that analysis, you're going to come up with a solution or a series of solutions or recommendations. And so by the end of this project, you're going to compile this document called a recommendation report that outlines, the problem, how you went about finding the solution itself, and all this is, of course, backed up by data. Okay, so the report structure of a recommendation report, I separated it into three pieces here. There are three main parts to look at, and each part is comprised of different sections. You can just kind of think of it as the front of the report, the body, the middle of the report, and then the back of the report. So front, middle, and back. There are three different parts. And as you would expect, the front matter, the front part of the report, has to do with a lot of the introduction stuff, the summary stuff, the documentation like a table of contents, like the reference material. Whereas the body, of course, goes into the actual introduction and then conducting your experiment and how you conducted your experiment, the results you got, the conclusions you can obtain from your results after some analysis, and then your recommendations based off of those results and conclusions. The last part, the back part of your recommendation report, is just going to consist mainly of reference material. So you have a glossary, a list of special symbols you might have in your report, any references you have to literature and articles and other reports and things like that. And then, of course, appendixes full of other information like graphs and tables. Okay, so we'll naturally start from the front of the recommendation report. So the purpose of the recommendation report is to orient the reader with the subjects, provide summaries for technical and managerial readers, and to help readers navigate through the report. So there are 6 different elements here, I believe, to go over in the front matter of the report. So the front matter is mainly for people that want to get an understanding, a quick understanding of the entirety of the report. And there's a few different sections you should put in there. Now, I should say that all of these sections that you find in this PowerPoint, any possible section you might want to include in your recommendation report, is not required. You don't have to put every single one of these in there. These are just kind of a bank or an arsenal of sections that you may put in there. Now, some of them are very valuable, and you certainly want to put some of them in there. But not all of these are required. You're going to kind of pick and choose which ones you want to put in. So this first letter of transmittal is basically just kind of an introduction letter. Very, very brief. Oftentimes, it's either included as kind of the first page, or you can honestly just print it off or write it up and just place it right on top of your printed out recommendation report. But the purpose is to do a very brief introduction of the report and the authors and all that stuff, just to prepare whoever is going to read the report for what they're going to be reading. I haven't seen too many of those in industry. Second, you're going to have a cover or a title page. Again, a little fancy. There are some cool ones where they might include the organization logo and things like that. But just, what a title page is, just states, title and author and stuff like that. Now, a lot of you are going to include what's called an abstract. Abstracts are used, of course, in more scientific documents or labs. It's just a brief summary of the report, but there is more of an emphasis on the technical nature of it, which is why you use it in the more science-y fields. But it's totally applicable here, especially if the subject matter or the problem you're trying to solve is more of a technical nature. So something else I should note is for the front matter, that might be the only part of the report that a lot of people read. So, for instance, managers don't have time necessarily to read every single page of the report. These reports can be several pages long, tens of pages long, right? 10, 20, 30, 40 pages long even, depending on the how dense the problem is. So oftentimes people are only going to want to read this beginning part. So with that in mind, we're going to move on to the bottom here, the executive summary. So the executive summary is something you will find in most reports when you go to college and you study engineering and how to write these reports, and just when you actually write these reports for your classes or projects or internships, you're almost always going to include an executive summary. At least with my experiences, they really push the executive summary. That's one of the first things they want to see on any report you turn in. So the big difference with an executive summary and an abstract or something like that is the word executive. This summary is written toward someone of a managerial position, kind of like I was saying earlier. And how you're going to write it is, kind of put your mind in the head of a manager. A manager just wants to know the recommendations to solve the problem quickly. They want to know how much it costs, how long it's going to take, so they can quickly make a decision so the organization can start to function. So really just going to put a very brief summary of the background of the problem and just the major findings. And that way you can justify your recommendations very quickly, and the executives can take those and move on their way and try to implement them to solve a problem. They're only about 1 page long. Anything longer than that is reserved for really, really long reports. But you really you don't want to go longer than 1 page, double spaced. And it also focuses on not just the problem at hand, but because the manager is reading it, it should also talk about how the problem and solution is affecting the organization as a whole. So if we implemented this solution, then the organization, will recover this much funding, or this much profits, or reduce cost to, some degree. So you want to make sure to identify that as well. Okay, the second part, the body, where most of your information is probably going to be. So of course you want to start with the introduction. The introduction just has the background, the purpose of the problem and why you're trying to come up with recommendations, with solutions for the problem. And so after that you move on to the methods, and that's just how you, the methods you chose on how you executed the study, essentially. What path you took to conduct the experiment. How did you conduct the experiment? And you want to make sure to provide enough detail for any kind of specific audience you might have, whether they're, again, more technical based, more managerial. You got to understand who your audience is and write the methods and explain the methods in a way to where everyone could basically understand it. So next you're going to go to the results after you conduct your project or experiment. And this is just the information you receive from your project, from your test. This is just raw data. This is just the outcomes of exactly what happened. You're not doing any kind of analysis yet. This is just stating what exactly you found. Well, after conducting the experiment, we found that, and then you insert numerical information or data or statistics or something like that. And then after that, you go to the conclusions. And the conclusions is where you take your results, your numerical data, your statistics, any kind of visual analysis, anything like that. And that's where you draw the conclusions. That's where you say, well, if we had 10% failure rate for a machine, that means there's something severely wrong because because it's supposed to run at a 95% standard or something like that. So this is where you actually talk about the implications of your results, why they matter, and things like that. So after that, you go to your recommendations, and this is what we've kind of all been waiting for. So the recommendations are your proposed solutions based off of your results and your conclusions. And so it clearly states what exactly the organization you're performing the test or the project for has to take. What should the organization do? What is their best case scenario? What path should they take? And it's important to note that there are multiple recommendations that can be made. You don't just have one. it is a good idea to probably kind of rank them like, okay, this is our first recommendation, or this is the one we recommend, but maybe if you are willing to spend more money, then maybe here's a second one, and et cetera, et cetera. So you kind of want to rank them, and you can do that in the recommendations, in the paragraph form with words, or you can put a table in or something like that. But you do want to clearly state your specific recommendations. And by this point, they've read the methods, the results, and the conclusions, so they understand why you're recommending what you are recommending. So everything's there for them to reference. And one thing to note is it is sometimes okay to recommend that no action be taken. Sometimes the best solution is to let things ride out. Maybe the problem is going to fix itself, which can certainly be true. So don't be afraid to recommend that. Now, it's not necessarily always the best option, of course. But just because a company hired you, or your own company or organization had you come up with this recommendation report, doesn't mean that you have to feel like you have to give them something more than oh, we're doing fine, we just have to keep going at it. All right, now the back matter of the report. So you know what a glossary, and you could probably figure out what a list of symbols is. It's just alphabetically listing certain terms, and in this case, symbols, so the reader can better understand more of the technical terms and be able to reference definitions and stuff like that. Then you have your references. You could also call it a bibliography or works cited. That's definitely common. You might be more familiar with that kind of title. That's just listing any references you came up with from outside sources, anything you want to reference that wasn't your work. And then lastly, appendixes. You can put in tables, graphs, maps, whatever kind of helped you come up with some of the information and your conclusions and methods and things like that. Okay, and here I have a recommendation report. Okay, so here we'll go down here after the letter. Okay, so that'd be a letter, and down here we have our title page. It has the title, the author is prepared for these people, probably certain managers or supervisors. We have a logo down here with the address. We have the abstract. They chose to put an abstract in here. A nice table of contents. With the table of contents, you don't want to just state the strict sections like introduction, methods, results, because it's very dense. You probably want to break it down into subsections. And here they did tasks, or they did certain subsections down here, maybe, hey, recommendation, option 1, option 2. And that way people can actually go back and reference. Because if you want to, if you're going to just do the table of contents for the sections, you're going to find that entire sections are, 4 pages long, 7 pages long, and it's going to be very difficult for the reader to navigate and find exactly what information they're looking for. So you want to be pretty specific when it comes to that stuff. Here's the executive summary, exactly a page long, very good. Down here at the last paragraph, we recommend 1 or 2 courses of action, reconsidering our cost criterion, or testing a representative sample of general purpose tablets for disinfection and the other technical characteristics, making suitable tablets available for clinical staff to demo. Okay, down to the introduction. Introduction here is about 2 pages long. This is the methods, and this is where they break down the tasks. Remember, when we want to format documents, we have a larger title right here, and then we break it down to a smaller title. This one looks italicized, which is totally fine. Same color. We have our body here. We have our listing out, 1 through 6. So remember how to format well. Okay, the methods are going to be pretty long, explaining exactly how you performed your test, your experiments. Now down to the conclusions. Did we miss the results? Oh, okay. Different conclusions. So what they were able to extrapolate from their results. And then the recommendations right here, option 1 and option 2. So it can be clearly stated like that. And then, of course, your references, your works cited page, and then appendix with some different information, and specifically some of their graphs, or not graphs, the data they acquired from their tests. They stated it here. So something like this might not be good in the report, the body of the report, but in the appendix, it's a great way to put it. Okay, so I'm going to leave this link there for you as a reference, so you have something to reference. Just a couple tools I wanted to go over here. This is a logic box. You can use this to basically go from results to your recommendations. And then over here is a decision matrix. Decision matrix, pretty important. It's a very interesting way on how to decide on certain solutions, maybe on certain ideas, maybe certain methods you want to use. Basically, you put all your ideas in one column and you add categories and you see what's important. And for instance, the weight right here, I don't know, let's see, score. So you have page length, you have the duplex, the color of these right here, and you rank them. So you rank them, and you can either go low to high or high to low. It doesn't really matter as long as you're consistent, right? And so you can rank them, and then you can add everything up at the end. Ricoh has a score of 52, Xerox has a score of 19, and Sharp has a score of 73. So depending on their ranking, either they're probably going to go with Sharp, or they're going to go with Xerox. Again, I don't know how they're ranking, as long as they're consistent. So just a nice way to make a decision. Okay, and that's going to be it. So for the assignment, I just want you to go through the example recommendation report and read the blue notes on the side. And the reason why I want you to do that is I want you to get a better idea on how to write recommendation reports and the kind of the substance within them. And because it takes a lot of work, a lot of time to come up with a recommendation report. You need a problem, you need to do a study and all that. And for this unit, I thought that'd be a lot. Maybe if I made that kind of the project for the unit, that'd be a kind of a good idea. But I just want you to kind of go through, read the side notes right here, just so you have a good idea. You don't need to read the entire thing, the entire report. And that way you kind of get a good understanding. Now, I want you to use this extra time to work on the instruction manual project that I went over a couple lessons ago. Okay. Before I leave, I want to emphasize that these recommendation reports, you'll see them all over industry. In internships I did, I think I did recommendation reports for each internship, and then a couple times in industry, over my time in industry. There was this one problem actually that I was faced to tackle, where I was working at a small water bottling manufacturing plant, and they were stacking all of these cases of water on pallets, and they were finding that a lot of these gallons of water were leaking. There's water coming out from the bottom of the pallet, and they were trying to figure out why and what was going on. So I spent a couple days, and I went through pallets, and I recorded the which bottles were leaking, which jugs were leaking, and I made a little chart. And I think the technical term is like a heat chart, where essentially it outlines, has like a kind of a 3D diagram, and it outlines where exactly your problems are. And what I found is, after analyzing the 20 or so pallets of leaking water, that most of the leaking was taking place at the bottom. Most of the gallons on the bottom were the ones leaking. So based off of that result, I concluded that the pallets were being stacked too high, and my recommendation was to not stack either the pallets on top of each other so much, or to reduce how many cases they're stacking on top of each other. Now, that's a recommendation. There could have been other solutions. There could have been other results or conclusions that I might have found. But that's just kind of a real life example of one time I did write a recommendation report, and it was very appreciated for one of my internships. So I'll leave you with that, and continue to work on your instruction manual project. I'm looking forward to seeing those, and take care. Bye-bye.